I came across this story not too long ago that the player base for Marvel's Avengers by Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics has been dropping rapidly over the past few weeks, where the game recently on Steam on PC has been peaking at around 2,000 players and has been dropping to less than 1,000 over the last few days. And this doesn't surprise me at all. This is exactly what I said was going to happen to this game when I did the review of the beta and when I eventually did a review on the game itself. Like I said, none of this surprises me whatsoever. You have the boss, the head boss over at Crystal Dynamics, Scott Amos, who says that he's confident that players will return to Marvel's Avengers with new missions and modes promised to arrive in the weeks ahead, which only further emphasizes and proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that this game was released incomplete deliberately, and Square Enix's game plan was to update and essentially fix a broken product over time, which has happened a lot in the 8th generation with various video games that have tried to do the same thing. Some of them successful, some of them not so successful. You know, this happened with games like Destiny 2, No Man's Sky, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Fallout 76. So this is far from the first games as a service game to be released incomplete. The whole point is that the publisher intends to fix the game and add more to it over time. I don't like that video game publishers do that. I've never supported that whatsoever, and that's why I typically don't buy games as a service games. And with this game, it's just a big shame that this entire IP was wasted on the concept of a games as a service business model, when it could have easily been just a straight single player game, which is what it should have been in the first place. That's what people wanted this to be, but Square Enix clearly had other plans. It's just a shame, like I said. The low player count on PC in particular has been causing matchmaking issues where people can't find other players to play multiplayer with. And I also experienced the same issues on PlayStation. That was on console. And clearly there's more console players than there are PC gamers. So if I was experiencing those issues on PS4, then I can only imagine how bad this game is on PC when it comes to matchmaking. Once again, it's a giant wasted opportunity. But I want to actually show what these numbers are currently to give an idea of how bad the situation actually is. So right now, an hour ago, you had a little over 2,000 people, almost 2,100 players, playing Avengers on Steam. The 24-hour peak has been 2,200 players. The all-time peak has been 28,000. So that's not really good. These numbers may be off a little bit, but you may have around 30,000 people that have played the game on Steam, and then you can track daily by the hour, how many people were playing the game. Roughly, it's in the thousands, or not even in the thousands. It's like a little over 1,000 or 2,000 players. The average number for September is 7,000. I'm interested to see what the number is going to be come October, because like I said in the video I made about the final product, because of how weak the in-game content is, the fact that the gameplay loop is extremely boring and repetitive, the fact that the gameplay itself, the core gameplay, is average, barely average, because of the fact that the game is focused on microtransactions and loot boxes, because of the fact that there's a limited number of characters in the game right now, and it wouldn't really matter if they had more characters in the game because they would all basically control very similarly. Because the campaign is short and you can't go back and replay it, which is the only thing that's truly good about the game in the first place, and the only thing that's received any type of universal critical acclaim as far as this game goes. And because of how shit the multiplayer is in this game, both in its matchmaking and the content offerings that go along with it, and because of the numerous amount of glitches and bugs that have plagued the game since launch, It's no surprise that the player base for Marvel's Avengers has been on the steady decline since the game came out. And personally, I think the damage is already done. If I go up on GameStat, this is a website that shows the statistics of all the players that have played any individual title across PlayStation consoles. You know, PS3, PS4, PS Vita, and then it also tracks PlayStation VR players. This list right here is the total, if you look at this number right here, the total player count for any individual specific game. The game that has been played the most on PS4 and PS3 is Grand Theft Auto 5. Beneath that is a bunch of Call of Duty games, Minecraft, Apex Legends, the first The Last of Us actually, mainly due to that amazing multiplayer mode that was in that game. That had a strong number of 44 million total players, and you still have people that play that game now. You have a bunch of sports games, more Call of Duty, more Grand Theft Auto. Uncharted 4 right here has 33 million. Red Dead Redemption 2 has 29 million total players. Marvel Spider-Man has 29 million total players. And these are numbers across the game's lifetime, the total lifetime. The middle column is new players between the period of the 4th of September and the 8th of October. Well, the 4th of October, excuse me. Then you have returning players with new trophies from that, in between that same time period. Basically, you would have to add those numbers together to get a rough estimate of how many people are still playing a specific game. You can look at the numbers here and get a good idea of, how many people actually bought a specific game, how many people played a specific game, and how successful the game has been at, keeping players around. Using some examples here, you have God of War 2018. This game changed the formula of the God of War series to accommodate a more casual audience, and it did that successfully, probably more so than any other game that I've seen. This game has a total player count, as of the 4th of October, 2020, of 24,200,000 players. It has had almost 400,000 new players over the past month, pretty much the same amount of players coming back that have played the game before. And then you can track how many people were playing a game on a specific day, specific year. This game is so popular, it's pretty much stayed in the millions. And this is over time, how many people have played the game over time, leading to this number right here. There's that. You have The Last of Us Part 2. The total player count for this is 6,800,000 players. Now, again, if you go back to the original The Last of Us, the remastered version of The Last of Us, this game has seen 44,200,000 players, whereas its sequel hasn't even gotten a quarter of that. And the reason for that is because, well, the game itself is highly controversial. It does not have a good story, which pretty much ruined the entirety of the single-player campaign. And they omitted multiplayer. So there was nothing to do after you beat the game except replay it. And I think a lot of people that played Last of Us Part 2, unless they were hardcore fanboys like the majority of these 67,000 people, these users who rated the game on PSN, unless you were a complete fanboy, I think the majority of the audience that bought and played The Last of Us Part 2 found it to be a huge disappointment. The numbers don't lie. I mean, that's a huge drop for that game. Data doesn't lie. You have Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now, this is the game so far that's most similar to Marvel's Avengers, given that it's another live service title. The thing about Star Wars Battlefront 2, unlike the Avengers game, is that the core gameplay was always good. The problem with it was every little decision that was made around the gameplay. The loot boxes, the microtransactions, locking popular characters from the series behind just ridiculous requirements that didn't actually, contribute to players actually sticking around for an extended period of time. Since the game's original release, a lot of people, because people love Star Wars, have wanted to see this game be fixed, and EA fixed the hell out of this game. This game has seen one of the biggest 360 turnarounds that I've seen this past generation, and yeah, plenty of people still play this. It has 17 million total players, with a healthy number of 250,000 new players and 260,000 returning players. So this is still a very active game right now. So that stars Battlefront 2. You have a game like Mortal Kombat 11, which continues to get new content, a game that's been out for a little over a year. That game has 8 million total users a little over a year after its initial release. Mortal Kombat X was far more successful, as that game has 29 million total players across its lifetime. Mortal Kombat 11 clearly wasn't as well received as the last game, but still highly successful, and you still have thousands upon thousands of players that are new, thousands upon thousands of players that return to play the game on console, and the same goes with a lot of these other games if you look at the numbers for each one. But see, some of these games have been out for years. A game like Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's only been out for a few months, but pretty much everything else here has been out for a few years now. So, but if I go to the page for Marvel's Avengers, the total player count for this right now is almost at 2 million strong on PS4, and obviously that number will increase over time, but I don't think it's going to increase by much unless the DLC and the updates just knock it out of the park. Out of the near 2 million players that have played the game so far, less than half have come back to continue playing the game any further, which doesn't surprise me. And it doesn't seem like this game, as far as its player base goes, is really going to increase or improve to where the game can be considered a major success. And that just shows how badly Square Enix fucked up with this game, and how badly mishandled the Avengers name has been under their name. Another game, specifically that I want to bring up, is Dissidia NT, which had the same exact mentality, business-wise, the same business model as Marvel's Avengers, underneath the same publisher. And the total player count for that, as of October 2020, and this game came out a few years ago, the total player count is not even 2 million players strong on PS4, and only 4,000 players have returned to the game within the last month. And then if I look at the country statistics for Dissidia NT, most of the players are people that come from Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea, and pretty much everyone else just doesn't give a shit about this game. By comparison, the Avengers is doing better than Dissidia NT, but not by much. Most of the players that have supported this game come from the United States, which isn't surprising whatsoever, given the characters are an American-made creation, and the IP itself is American. Then you have Australia, underneath the United States, Canada, Taiwan, United Kingdom, Singapore, Hungary, Hong Kong, Iceland, and then it goes from there, and it just keeps dropping. So in order for this game to come back, basically, it would have to retain the interest of the United States, Australia, Canada, Taiwan, UK, and so on and so forth, of the people who still play the game now, which isn't a very large number, and then it would have to attract new players in order to have a healthy post-launch content following. But I don't see that happening. The game may have received an 8.1 rating user score on PSN, but most of these people, I guarantee, are fanboys who would have overrated the fuck out of the game, regardless of what Square Enix chose to do with the IP. You can't take ratings on PSN seriously. These numbers right here is what anyone should be paying attention to and tracking statistics on any individual video game. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this game is going to turn itself around. Now, again, I could be wrong, but they can't just add new characters to the game and expect people to come back, because the gameplay, the core gameplay itself, as I already mentioned earlier, is mediocre. It doesn't have really any depth to it, and what little depth is there becomes old and repetitive extremely quick. A big part of that is because of how terrible the in-game content is and how repetitive the missions are, how boring the missions are. You could tell they didn't even really try to give this game a lot of breathing room past the end of the single-player campaign. And that's why many people are considering this game to be one of the worst games that's been released this year. And the only people that are enjoying this are the people who have a mindset and attention span of a 15-year-old. And I'm sure there's some smart 15-year-olds out there that can see this bullshit-ass game for the mediocre nonsense that it is. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this game's going to be a big success in the long run. You would think Dissidia NT would have taught Square Enix a lesson, given how much of a complete and total utter failure Dissidia NT is. But clearly they didn't learn their lesson. Hopefully after this, you won't see any more games as a service titles with popular IPs such as Final Fantasy and Marvel. I mean, Anthem itself, if you look at what happened to that game by EA, Electronic Arts, and BioWare, that should have been enough of a wake-up call to really any major video game publisher in the industry to stop trying to force the games as a service model on gamers. A lot of people really do not want games as a service because they tend to come out and be half-ass. Hopefully this is a big lesson to Square Enix and they wake up, but I think the best bet would be for Marvel to take the license away from them and give it to a different publisher that would actually do a better job. It's unclear what the fallout of this is going to be, but I'm sure it'll be an interesting one nevertheless.